Okay, I think this is working. This is excellent. Hi everybody, this is Maya Good, and today is day 16 of Novel Prep Month. I am testing out the live streaming software because tomorrow I would like to take you through a basic tutorial on Scrivener live. And it will be on this channel. I'm expecting to be up and running at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask live, definitely subscribe so this pops up in your feed. I'm going to go through a Scrivener tutorial, and then I will answer any questions that come in to the live stream about the work that we've done so far. Before I get any further into this, I need to say I'm not a published author yet. It will happen. It's just a matter of time. And I'm not a writing teacher. I'm somebody who's been working really hard on learning to write. And over the last few years of failing National Novel Writing Month, I learned enough skills to be able to complete it. And I'm hoping to take you from initial idea all the way through to feeling prepared and confident going into National Novel Writing Month. Today is Friday 9th, the 16th, and this is a really exciting day because over the next week we are going to actually finish your outline. Up until now you should have your one-page summary, one-sentence summary, one-paragraph summary, and you should be completing your 4 to 8-page summary depending on where you started from. You also have a bunch of character sketches, and you have a basic, just the most basic sketch of a timeline. So here's what I want you to do today. Today you're really going to be doing a lot of thinking about how you're going to prepare for a National Novel Writing Month as far as your software or paper. My first National Novel Writing Month that I completed, I did it on paper, and I found that a really satisfying experience, especially since I was writing a really emotional story. I felt a lot more connected to the story writing it out by hand, but there are some limitations to using paper. The first few times I did National Novel Writing Month, the first time I used Word, and definitely ran into some limitations with that. And I began using Scrivener the second time. I think it was like the first year or maybe second year Scrivener had actually been out. It was brand new software back then. And it really changed the way I wrote and the way I thought about my writing, but I still wasn't able to fully understand how best to use it for really what you're doing is speed drafting. I would say last year is when I really got into my stride with Scrivener. And so up until then, I had used Scrivener for my thesis for college, and it just saved me. That was the first time I used it. The first time I used it, I did not actually use it for a novel. I was writing my senior thesis for my bachelor's degree, and at one point I had paper strung all over the floor in my condo, and I had this tiny little path, and my third graders were having to walk on this tiny little path because all over my floor I had printed out copies of research articles, and I had maps of thought processes that I was really working through to create my my research story essentially for the first third of my thesis. And so I had all this paper, and they were in stacks and piles to figure out, okay, so these papers pertain to this idea, and these papers pertain to this idea, and they come together, and here's some more research articles that encompass a little bit of both. It was a mess. And that was just the papers. We're not even talking about the books. I had books just everywhere. And so when I began using Scrivener, what it allowed me to do was to take all this different research and all of these bullet points and things I had on the computer in a gazillion different places and really organize them. And then the other thing it did for me, I was actually a year late graduating because the idea of writing the first part of my thesis was so overwhelming that I would start and stop, and I just felt clogged with writer's block essentially. And yeah, it was a research article, but really, it really was writer's block. I would get up and I would look at all this different research, and it just didn't make sense because it was going in too many different directions at once. And Scrivener allowed me to be able to break it down into pieces and parts. And that's what got me. Without Scrivener, I probably wouldn't have graduated. So I'm really big on Scrivener in that respect, but that's not the only or even the best way to do National Novel Writing Month. I actually would say I had my best experience with National Novel Writing Month when I wrote my novel by hand. And that was partially because it felt like a milestone, truly. You know, I was coming into this, I had gotten a brand new, really beautiful notebook. I had journals my whole life, but I'd never finished one. And here was this brand new notebook. It was just gorgeous. And I had my first really serious fountain pen, and it wrote so smooth. And I think that would be my first tip for anyone that's thinking about doing National Novel Writing Month with paper and pen. I would recommend doing it with a pen that feels really smooth, because you don't want to come out of National Novel Writing Month with carpal tunnel. Let me just see here. Oh yeah, there's a chat window. Wow, I didn't even see that. So you don't want to come out of National Novel Writing Month with carpal tunnel, and by having a really smooth pen, you're able to not press so hard on the paper, and it's much easier on your hand. If you don't write cursive, I personally would not write my novel with printing, because you do tend to press more on the paper, and it's a much more jagged movement. Writing in cursive is much more fluid, and it's less stress on the hand. Essentially, that's why cursive was invented, was for long periods of writing and to make things, you know, because it was comfortable. So if you're thinking about doing your National Novel Writing Month on paper, I would recommend getting a notebook that is special to you in some way. I would recommend you getting some tabs. In that way, you can write out of order. We're jumping ahead a little bit, but these are things that it's better to think about them now than it is to go into November and then realize something's not working and not have any idea of things that you can do to fix it. So one of the things that can be a problem when you're doing your National Novel Writing Month on paper or in Word is sometimes the next scene that you're scheduled to write is not coming. It's just not there. And you may be blocked, or sometimes you may feel really inspired to write a scene that happens several scenes later. And in Word and on paper, it's a very linear way of writing, and if you start writing out of order, then at the end it can be really hard to figure out what scene goes where. So if you're going to write on paper or in Word, I would do one of two things. I would either use tabs to write out of order, and that way you can see that this scene actually belongs someplace else, and when you go back through it later, it's easy to tell where it belongs. In Word in particular, I would actually open up a new document for each chapter, and that way, if you need to write something out of order, it's much easier to tell where it belongs. So those are two things that you can do if you're not going to use Scrivener. I recommend using Scrivener. Scrivener normally has a 30-day trial, and that's 30 days open, not 30 days that you've owned it. And for National Novel Writing Month, that trial is extended. And the extended trial is actually open right now. So you can go to Scrivener, download it, and use it all the way through National Novel Writing Month. And if you finish your novel, if you win, quote unquote, win National Novel Writing Month, you get 50% off. So it ends up being like $20. If you buy it ahead of time, it ends up, I think it's like 20% off, I think. It's not quite as much, and it's the same if you do National Novel Writing Month, but you don't win National Novel Writing Month. Again, you do get a discount, just not as big a discount. Just to tell you how much Scrivener means to me, I have purchased it once on discount and twice full price, and I've used the Ubuntu version. Literally every time I get a new computer, the first software that I load to my system is Scrivener. It just makes writing so much easier. Now I'm talking about all this now because tomorrow, your assignment, we're really going to start preparing your writing environment. And so you need to think about this now so that you can start to prepare your files. I'm going to be preparing the files in Scrivener on video, so you can see me do that. But if you're going to use Word, or if you're going to use one of the other programs that's really good for writing, think about that now. Go ahead and download them. Look at them so that you're a little bit familiar. There's a lot of great programs out there that are specifically made for writers. I've used a couple different ones. I recommend going to the National Novel Writing Month website. So that's NaNoWriMo.org. And under, let me check, I think it's resources, but let me just check real quick. Oh, come on, sign in. Hurry, hurry, hurry. I was just signed in. Why do I have to sign in again? So if you go to, here we go, if you go to the National Novel Writing Month website and you make your profile if you don't have it already, and then what you can do is you can go to the tab that says Inspiration. It's at the top of the page. It says Inspiration, and it's a drop-down menu. And if you look at the bottom, there's sponsor offers. Underneath sponsor offers, there are multiple software companies that are offering free trials, discounts, things like that for people that are doing National Novel Writing Month. Take a look at those. A lot of them are for Mac. There's a few that are for Windows. There's a lot of amazing software out there. You don't have to be stuck using Word. And I say stuck because when you're writing something that is so big as a novel, Word can be very unwieldy. If you get to a certain number of pages, it can lock up, it can freeze. There's problems with backing up stuff. It can be an organizational nightmare. Whereas some of these software, the way a lot of them work is you have one document, and within that document you have multiple files, but you don't see them as files. You just see the one document. But in the back end, they're really files, so that every scene is technically separate from any other scene, and every chapter is technically separate from any other chapter. And it makes both writing out of order and being a messy author and having all of your different versions easier. It also makes editing a lot easier. So, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, just really deciding what you're going to be comfortable with. If you have a laptop that you're going to be free to move around with, if typing is comfortable for you, I recommend using software. If you want to try your hand at writing your novel by hand, I encourage it. That was a huge growth experience for me, and I really, really enjoyed writing my novel by hand. And I have some tips for that I'm going to get into later. But if you're going to write by hand, now is the time to really think about what kind of notebooks are you going to use. Are you going to use pencil, or are you going to use pen? Do you have a pen that's really comfortable for long writing periods? Maybe you want to sit down and write in your diary for the next few nights and practice handwriting an hour at a time, and see what writing for an hour actually feels like before you get into National Novel Writing Month, and 3 days in you realize, I can't do this, and I haven't downloaded any software and I don't know where to even begin. So that's what I want you to think about as far as the writing. Now, for preparing for tomorrow, you should be finishing up your summary, your long summary. This is really your last narrative summary. So as you're finishing it, I want you to go back over it and edit it. I know this sounds really weird, but a lot of times when we're writing that narrative summary, just a lot of gobbledygook comes out, and then by the time you get to the end, you realize you want to change things at the beginning. So I want you to read through your narrative summary, and I want you to ask yourself, is there something interesting happening in each paragraph? Does each paragraph pertain to that one sentence summary? So you have your main idea, you have your elevator speech. So I want you to ask yourself, what is the theme of this book? What is it that you're trying to say in this novel? And then go through that long summary and ask yourself, does this scene add to the theme? Does the scene add to my one-sentence summary, or is it extraneous? Is the scene boring? If you're bored reading it, people are going to be bored reading it. You're going to be bored writing it. So what you're really doing is you're testing this long summary to see, is this really the book you want to write? Is this the structure you want to write? Is this the most interesting way to do things? If there's a part that you're reading and you're like, that just feels really boring, I can guarantee you that when you get to that point during National Novel Writing Month, you're not going to want to write that scene because it is going to be boring to you. So if it's boring at the scene, at the paragraph level, ask yourself, what can I do to make it more interesting? Maybe it's in the wrong spot. That's the other thing I want you to do. Now that you have this long summary, I want you to take all the main events that happen in that long summary and underline them in pencil. And then go to your timeline that you have on paper or you have on the computer and figure out where all those things happen. And this is a way to check and make sure that you don't have scenes in the wrong place. You may need to move scenes around. You get what I'm saying? So that's really what I want you to do today is double check, make sure that your scenes are interesting, make sure that they're where you want them to be, and double check the placement of your scenes by putting the main events on your timeline and then standing back and looking at it and thinking to yourself, does this make the most sense? Is this the most interesting timeline? If I move scenes around, does the story become more interesting? And that is today's novel writing prep video. It looks like the live streaming is working, so I will go ahead and schedule the live stream for tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you then. Ciao. And how do I turn this thing off?